I wanted to be a soldier since I was 9 years old. That dream predated the paganism, predated the angel, and predated all of it. So when I finally enlisted, it wasn't because I was running from anything. It wasn't because I was searching for answers. It was just something I had always wanted to do. After all, my uncle had been doing that, and it did wonders for him. But God has a way of meeting you wherever you are. So I started in the reserves, the Army Reserves, while I was in high school, and then a year after I graduated, I went active duty and got my first assignment with the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii, Schofield Barracks. It was gorgeous, and I still want to go back. I want to go explore Kauai. But anyways, I digress. Not long after I got into my first unit, I encountered this guy, an NCO that everyone called X. Now, I learned after I met him from other sources that X had been a Buddhist monk in Laos before he came to America and joined the army as an MP. Leaving the monastery, it plagued him. He was constantly attacked by entities, and he believed that this was just spiritual consequences for abandoning his calling. But I didn't know any of that yet, okay? What I did know was I had just met this man. We had never spoken a word before. He knew nothing about my spiritual history. And he selected me out of a group of new recruits on the very first day he met us. And he pulled out a notebook and he started writing questions about spiritual topics. And then he passed it to me in the middle of us doing, what was it? Like training, some sort of training we were doing. We were supposed to be listening to the other NCOs, but that didn't quite work out when he started talking with me. He just passed it to me, no introduction, no small talk, just questions. And you know what? I engaged. Mostly out of curiosity, because I'm like, where on earth is this going? How did he know to even ask me? So we hadn't talked at all. I'm telling you guys, I didn't talk to this guy. He just looked at me and somehow knew that I was the person to talk to about this stuff. And that's how X and I kind of became friends. We were passing notes about things most soldiers don't discuss, and here I am. I was just a PFC. So it was weird. But yeah. So, of course, he wasn't the only one that would just look at me and assume I knew stuff. Let me give you another example. So there I am. I'm walking down the, how do you say this? Ahi Street. Anyway, it's Ward Village, okay? Like, it's Ward Village area down in Oahu towards Barnes and Noble. Like, it doesn't look the same as what it does now, but back then there was Barnes and Noble. I was walking towards Barnes and Noble. I was stopped randomly by two women that wanted to know, hey, what do you think that we should study if we wanted to dive into Wicca? What? What? Made no sense to me at all. All I could do was tell them that I wouldn't trust the gods or goddesses, and I asked them afterwards, why did you ask me? And I was wearing normal clothes, guys. I looked like any normal tourist. It wasn't like goth or anything like that. I was wearing like a random t-shirt. It wasn't like it had like characters on it or any paganry on it. I was just normal. Why did you ask me? And they said that they just had a feeling I'd know something about it. Nothing there singled me out. They just said, we just had a feeling it'd be you. And this happened a few other times. And then there was also this one time I went to, like, this guy that I was dating. He really wanted to try out what the spiritual, like, they had this little spiritual thing. They had a bunch of psychics. It was like a little psychic fair at Mililani, the Mililani Mall. And he had me go out there one time, and he begged me to let them do a reading on me. And I was like, okay, fine, because he was wanting to pay. He was very insistent, so I'd let them do a reading on me. And the lady he ends up picking, she clearly has a familiar spirit attached to her, because she told me that there was something wrong with my eye. And I was like, oh, well, no, she's actually right. This eye went blind very briefly. And then she started saying, oh, you have a lot of power, like reading my palm. And then she got very concerningly aggressive. And she said, but I have more power than you. And I'm like, what? But like, I'm sitting there and I even told her I didn't really believe what she was doing. But either way, I mean, she shouldn't have known that I knew anything at all. But it was there. These entities definitely wanted me to know that they hadn't forgotten about me. But you know what? I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because that actually happened post Iraq, and we're like trying to go timeline here. So let's go back to Iraq, right? So when our unit deployed to Iraq, I arrived there first. X had been injured before we shipped out, so he would join us a few months later. Now, I need you to understand something about Iraq. It was spiritually demanding in a way I had never experienced. If you've ever watched the anime Bleach, yes, I know, whatever, this might sound kind of cringy, but this is just an easy way for me to kind of illustrate this and give you a visual. But there's this concept called spiritual pressure. It's the weight of a powerful being's presence pressing down on you. And that's really the closest I can come to describing it. The spiritual pressure in Iraq was nearly unbearable. I could feel demonic forces all around me, and it was sickening. Not frightening, sickening. Like a constant nausea in my soul. I was still trying to follow God at this point, still leaning in that direction after the angel's message. But I found myself very angry with him, very angry with God. Why wasn't he protecting me from this? Why could I feel everything pressing against me and have no relief? And then something worse happened. I need to be honest here, even though it's uncomfortable. You need to understand who I am to understand why this was disturbing. Sex just isn't me. Listen, I got a child. I'm not against it, but I could go my entire life without it and be perfectly fine. It's just not a part of who I am. It's not how I'm wired. But what's even less me, what sickened me toward the core, was the feeling of something spiritual trying to make me feel things I did not want to feel. Urges that weren't mine, heat that didn't belong to me. For 3 weeks this happened. 3 weeks of fighting something I couldn't see, something trying to crawl and entice me and twist me into someone I just am not. And then it stopped. After yet another explosion of anger at God over him not protecting me from this. And I wish I could say this brought me belief, but what happened next made me feel almost worse. X had finally arrived in Iraq, and months after the rest of us. A few nights after my torment ended, I was walking past his CHU, which stands for Compact Housing Unit, and I heard him screaming in his sleep. It was loud. It was anguished. The demonic pressure that had been on me had shifted to him. I had heard stories from other soldiers that X had awful dreams, but this was the first time I had witnessed it myself. The entities that had followed him from the monastery, the ones that punished him for leaving, they still seemed to be with him, or maybe this was just new. I don't know. Maybe they just they jumped on board, and now whatever was pressuring me had shifted and joined them. X and I talked about it. I tried to help him cope with what was happening, and it did seem to lessen, but I don't think it ever truly disappeared. Some battles just don't end just because you want them to. Then something else started happening in Iraq, something I didn't really realize at first. I was singing. Apparently, it would surface when I was stressed, and I never really knew I was doing it. My NCOs really hated it. They'd find me singing while I had detainees outside and tell me to cut it out. To them, it looked unprofessional, and maybe it was, but I didn't know I was doing it until they pointed it out afterwards. once all the detainees were back in their cells. The first time that I became aware of it while it was actually happening was when a detainee, an elder, asked me if I could sing again. A song had apparently just ended, and he and the detainees with him wanted more. I didn't know what I had been singing, and when I tried to reflect back, I realized I didn't even know what words I had been singing. They weren't English. They weren't Spanish. They weren't Japanese. Just for the record, at the time I was known to have been watching a bunch of anime with subtitles, so not Japanese. And it wasn't Arabic. It was like free flowing vowels and consonants sung along a melody I didn't recognize. Sounds that had no meaning I could identify, arranged in patterns that felt like a language but weren't any language I knew. Some people have told me it could be tongues, the gift of the Spirit, described in Acts. I'm also aware that there's another term that it could be, and that's glossolalia, which is something different. That is, glossolalia is the mind-producing speech-like sounds shaped by cultural or neurological factors. I still really don't know which it is. But Iraq was where I first discovered that this was happening. It doesn't mean it never happened before, just that I never noticed until someone asked me to do it again. So when we got back from deployment, I had leave coming. I spent Christmas and New Year's with my mother, stepfather, and sister in Maui. My brother couldn't make it. He was still trying to get his own life together. Anyways, when we got everything done, we had fun. We went down to the road to Hana and got to explore Maui. I dropped them off at the airport, and I had a few hours before my flight back to Oahu. So I did something I had learned over the years from the online community that I had been part of. I let something guide my driving. You could call it intuition, I don't know, call it the force, call it God, just something working through my stubbornness, whatever it was. I just got in the car and drove wherever I felt pulled to go. And I ended up at it's IAO Needle Park. Can never quite say that word. So this was New Year's 2007, or it might have been New Year's Day 2008. Never can really remember exactly which. But it had been raining before I arrived, and the rain stopped as I reached the top of the park. I got out and walked around, trying to find a quiet spot to meditate. But every time I settled somewhere, I got interrupted. There was this woman there who just, attracted people. Every time she walked past me, someone would stop to talk to her. She wasn't trying to disturb me. It was just like the universe kept putting her in my path, or maybe putting me in hers. Eventually, I gave up trying to avoid her and decided to talk with her. I waited while she was finishing up a conversation with a couple standing at the stream, and then I approached. She smiled at me and said she could tell I was very spiritual, that she had noticed me trying to meditate each time she passed, and we talked for a while about spiritual things. And then suddenly her face changed into this bright realization. Oh, she said, I finally understand why I'm here. Kind of gave her a little bit of a puzzled look, and then she went on to explain. I come here every year with my son, but this year he wasn't able to be here. At first I wasn't going to come at all, but I felt a need to be here, and now I understand. Come. So she invited me to join her in the creek. I'm a kahuna, she said, and I feel that Maui wishes to connect you. Do you mind if I facilitate this? Well, I didn't really understand what I was agreeing to, but the energy was just so calming. I felt complete peace as I stepped into the water and received her words. She told me that I had a spiritual mission ahead of me, something that would have profound importance if I just gave into it. I smiled and, we talked a little bit more after the ceremony ended, and I left the park and the rain began to pour again, as if the sky had been holding its breath, waiting for the moment to pass. I flew back to Oahu with her words echoing in my mind. A spiritual mission. Profound importance. Give into it. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know how to give in to something I couldn't see or name. But I was about to find out, because my next duty station would take me to somewhere the spiritual world was even more alive in than Hawaii. I was going to Okinawa, and everything was about to get way more complicated. I'm Alethea, and this is Wandering Sinai.